So first thing I want to say, there is literally nothing wrong with Boeing's VC-25, or the current Air Force One, other than every 4 to 8 years one might dislike whoever's riding in it. Easily one of the most advanced, high-tech, and sheerly expensive aircraft to ever be built, it would be ludicrous to call the VC-25 anything short of a marvel of technology. So what if we took every single feature that Air Force One had and dialed it up to 11? What if instead of the most high-tech vehicle possible, imagine the most expensive plane in the world, and then shove another $50 billion straight into the furnace? Some of you might misunderstand the point of this video, so before everyone starts booing me in the comments section, let me explain something. We're not improving or modernizing or trying to provide evidence that I'm some superior designer to Boeing engineers, no. Instead, we're trying to one-up every single feature of Air Force One in the most exaggerated way physically possible. Plus, the only thing myself and my fanbase have in common with Boeing engineers is our peculiar obsession with horses. So this is the notoriously requested by my fans Air Force One redesign, the GTY-91. We'll be building this plane in everyone's favorite aerospace simulator, Flyout, by using Blender-like 3D construction techniques, requiring players to essentially crack the Enigma code to build working engines, and also being literally the only aerospace game with decent enough aerodynamics to do this. Flyout has made its name as not only one of the most difficult games to learn and build in, but also as one of the most accurate and customizable aerospace building games on the market. So let me let you in on a few secrets, not just about Air Force One, but about aerodynamics as a whole, as I struggle to make perhaps one of the most irritating builds I've ever done on this channel: the fuel-burning, money-wasting, ear-shattering behemoth aircraft known as the GTY-91, or as we'll come to know it, Bo Force One. However, before I go and build this Air Force One ripoff, I need to sit here relentlessly justifying every reason this monstrosity of an aircraft, which single-handedly raises the maintainer's suicide rate and ocean acidity levels, even exists in the first place. And it all starts with this guy. This is Bo, my beloved cat. He goes by many nicknames, such as Mr. Bobby, Bo Bear, Bongus, The Stinker, and Little Bognar. Some time ago, we decided to make Bo the president of a fabled country of 100% fantasy and absurdity. And hey, just by looking at this guy, I would gladly spend a minimum of 30% of my paycheck towards building a stupidly inefficient airliner just for him to accomplish all of the goals that the sitting president for his 13th consecutive term might need. The president's plane, gladly paid for by all the glorious taxpayers of the UFB, will be a one-of-a-kind airplane, designed and constructed exclusively for our president, the GTY-91. To satisfy my beloved cat Bo and all of his presidential needs, the plane needs to be able to fill out a few goals, no matter how ridiculous, expensive, or inefficient it may be. First and foremost, speed. The GTY-91 needs to be able to cruise or traverse at speeds exceeding Mach 2.0, as well as having a maximum airframe speed of Mach 2.5 plus. This means that the aircraft needs to be able to supercruise without the usage of afterburners at speeds up to Mach 2, while also being able to travel in shorter stints at even higher speeds, ensuring that Bo gets to everywhere he needs to go in the shortest amount of time possible. Next, there needs to be some range on Bo Force One. Aerial refueling capabilities need to exist on the aircraft so it can fly any range, any distance, and stay airborne for incredibly long periods of time. This is to ensure that Bo gets where he needs to go without any connecting flights, as well as to guarantee that the plane may stay airborne for long periods of time in the event of a nuclear conflict, similar to the real Air Force One. Extra weight will also be added for belly radiation shielding, so that the plane can withstand nearby nuclear blasts with the highest probability of not crumpling like a tin can and going down faster than a fat kid on a seesaw. Although let's be honest here, the probability of actually staying airborne is still pretty low. Next, the GTY-91 also needed to take off in as little space as possible. Being able to take off at all conventional commercial airports at a maximum takeoff weight was a necessity for getting Bo as close to where he needs to go as possible. Lastly on this long list of requirements is comfort. Bo needs ample space to be as comfortable as possible. With that out of the way, let me show you guys the agony-inducing 60-hour design process that led me to the finished product, starting with... This was just about the most important part of the build, and getting the shaping right was essential to our goals of Mach 2 to 2.5 flight. On top of needing to go fast, the fuselage would also need to maintain a similar size to a real wide-body airliner due to the requirement of luxury. This means that the diameter and length would need to be substantially longer than the Concorde SST, the only real-life example we can really go off of. Sorry Tu-144. Our aircraft would be substantially newer than the Concorde SST, the time of early aircraft production beginning around the late 80s and trailing into the early 90s. This, combined with our complete disregard for design costs, meant that we could provide some major range and efficiency bonuses when compared to the Concorde. As you all know, supersonic air is different from subsonic air. Since the air can't exactly get out of the way in time, a shockwave is formed around the aircraft. This occurs in areas where the cross-sectional area increases drastically. Past these areas of very high pressure and heat, low pressure zones known as fan expansions form. This is also where you see the vapor build up on humid days when you see a supersonic plane pass. This all happens where the aircraft's area is suddenly limited. All of this weird air movement takes a lot of energy, all energy that is taken directly from your aircraft. This quote-unquote tax required to create these shocks is known as wave drag, which at the end of the day is just a new coefficient we can tack onto the end of the drag equation. Our goal is to get the wave drag produced by our airplane as low as possible, and to do that we need to make sure our aircraft's cross-sectional area changes as smoothly as possible. This inspired quite a few of the aircraft's design elements, such as the very pointy nose, the very long tail, the highly swept delta wing configuration, and the area reduction over the wings, giving the fuselage an almost hourglass shape. Sleek, aerodynamically efficient, and with a wave drag coefficient of only 0.001 at transonic speeds, there only remained one problem: the pilot visibility. Especially with our theoretical approach angle of attack being nearly 10 to 15 degrees, this was abysmal. Since this was before the time of augmented reality cockpit design, as such as the new concepts for supersonics, the only real workaround to keep low wave drag and good pilot visibility on approach and landing was the famous droop snoot mechanism. By pulling the front of the aircraft downwards during approach and landing, we could achieve the same visibility as a traditional airliner without having to worry about compromising supersonic efficiency. Behind the nose of the aircraft, the shaping took a similar yet distinct profile when compared to different supersonic airliners. While I used a similar delta wing configuration for supersonic flight dynamics and good lifting qualities at higher AOA, we also featured a more conventional tailplane configuration when compared to airliners such as the Concorde. This was actually because the extra tail authority was needed to get the plane off the ground as quickly as possible. The tail, as well as additional vortex generators towards the nose of the aircraft, helped reduce rotation speed and thus reduce takeoff distance. While this wouldn't really work for a regular airliner since we use delta wings, and since delta wings mainly rely on vortex lift, the more angle of attack we could generate, the more lift we would generate, just about all the way up to 20 degrees. So in other words, the faster I can rotate, the faster I can get off the ground. All in all, the airframe was a gigantic wide-body airliner stretching back 96 meters in length. To give you all an idea, this is the aircraft in comparison to the Boeing 777 on the left and the 737 on the right. The airframe also featured some windows, which were noticeably smaller than your traditional jet window. This was because, as opposed to the traditional cruising altitude, this plane cruised closer to 18 kilometers, or about 60,000 feet. This means extra reinforcement was needed for the windows due to the massive pressure differential. Luckily for Bo, at those altitudes you could just begin to see the curvature of the Earth. But now that the basic airframe was complete, it was time to move on to... So, with the assumption that we want to get to our destination in any amount of short time, we needed these engines to be powerful. Luckily for us, somewhere along the design process for the aircraft, the UFB Ministry of Liberty decided that only one of these aircraft needed to be built. Only for the all-in powerful Bo. And let me just say, That's a very good thing. A single engine from this thing produced 153 decibels without afterburner. And there are 4 of them. In other words, you'll probably know if the UFB president is leaving your town because the entire ground will rumble and you might start bleeding out of your ears if the takeoff involves full afterburner. The engines featured high combustion temperatures, low overall pressure ratios at static, and variable ramps to help compress air at supersonic speeds. Each engine had a core inlet diameter of about 1.82 meters. This means that most people could stand straight up and not be as large as the compressor fan. These ludicrously large engines were capable of burning through 8.5 gallons of fuel per second on full afterburner, each. Meaning at absolute maximum performance, Bofors One could go through over 34 gallons of fuel every second. Or if you're measuring in weight, that's about 100 kilograms every single second blowing through those fuel pumps. After adding the engine pods, the variable inlet ramps, and running a test flight, I found that the engines on the aircraft could supercruise up to Mach 2.3, which is well above our goal. This is the absolute best case scenario because later on we're going to be adding more draggy elements to the aircraft. With all that out of the way, let's move on to my least favorite element of this aircraft. This part took so much time, so much effort, and genuinely delayed the video by about 4 days. What is this part, you might be asking? Well, of course, it's... Alright, let me tell you all something. Was genuinely one of the most annoying things about building this plane by a long shot. Wanna know how much extra time I spent just tuning on this plane? In terms of testing, downloading the MI8 mod just to get them to work properly, redoing them at least 3 times, and having to load the plane in and test them every single time I wanted to figure out if they were working or not, I probably spent an entire at least 30 hours just on... So trust me, when I say I really hate working on, at least you now know why. So to start, I needed a working bogey system which doesn't exist in Flyout, period. So I started with the soft joint landing gear configuration, but due to unforeseen bugs with the stiffness, I had to switch to the double swing joint landing gear system. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it, but they're basically 2 more complex ways of getting landing gear to actually work like real landing gear in Flyout. From there, it turned out there are more glitches, so I had to switch back to the soft joint wing system again. And from there, it turned out that the default in-game landing gear doesn't use the same physics as wheels, and the wheels generate an insane amount of rolling resistance for literally no reason, and also chain smoke like a 50-year-old aunt outside a Thanksgiving party. To solve this, I started by putting an electric motor inside which mimicked the ground speed of the aircraft, but this also didn't work because it would glitch out and explode once the rolling resistance was reduced or the plane started to lift off the ground. Instead, I needed to download an entire mod and hide default landing gear inside of the wheels using this mod to pretend they were normal, but then it turned out the aerodynamic model of Flyout didn't like that, and it ended up causing my aircraft's drag to magically double for literally no reason at all. So to solve that, I came up with a never-before-seen zero-strength soft joint system which involved an invisible physics-less fuselage piece which auto-detaches when you spawn the aircraft, all of this just to have working landing gear. So you have to download the MI8 mod if you want to fly this thing and not have weird visual glitches in the landing gear, but hey, at least it works. On that note, let me move on to the interior, and enough with this stupid title cards. We really don't... Hey, no, get that out of... You know what? Why do I even bother trying to fight it? Editing Messier seems to very obviously hate voiceover Messier. So, do you guys want to know why I never build airliners on the M82 channel? Well, first of all, nobody cares about airliner videos most of the time, so I don't make them for that. Second of all, the more obvious reason is that they take so much more time and effort to model properly. It's the same reason, for example, if you fly a bomber in War Thunder, they actually don't model the cockpits and just do placeholders. If I wanted to put as much detail into this airliner as any of my other planes, even half as much, you guys genuinely wouldn't even be able to run it, and it would probably be about 10 times bigger in file size. It just wouldn't run in the game, period. And on top of that, I'd probably be spending 70 plus hours per build. So unless I want to be making less than half of a minimum wage employee on this video, I'm just gonna model a basic low part count cockpit and use stock images that pop up when I search for all the descriptive words in my video script for each part of the aircraft, which I hope you guys will accept as a substitute. The aircraft does have a floor plan and some interior towards the front before I gave up, so let me explain everything with this top-down view. Towards the front, starting with the nose, you have a cockpit. Just above the cockpit is an aerial refueling probe and a part of a Mode 3A transponder for the top of the aircraft. Behind that is the presidential bedroom and presidential office, complete with its own windows and door. Moving behind that, you have a medical room which would be capable of treating injured people aboard the aircraft. You move further back and you reach a long corridor hallway on the left and an EW station on the right, complete with 4 terminals for monitoring all potential electronics threats and reacting accordingly. To work properly, the EW operators had infrared dazzlers in the wings and tail booms of the aircraft, an electronics warfare suite on the top and bottom of the vehicle, as well as a missile approach warning receiver all the way back in the tail. To deal with the detected threats, the EW pods had radar warning receivers and radar jammers. There were countermeasures integrated into the engine pods, and a radar decoy launcher was situated towards the back of the aircraft along with the APU. Behind the EW room was a kitchen, and behind that was the dining room. Immediately behind that was the first bathroom on the plane. Moving further back was the crew quarters for the pilots, engineers, and security, with a security locker room slightly behind that. After yet another set of bathrooms for the crew is the back of the plane. This is where the UFB puts all of its reporters. Known as Scum Class, there are no seats, there's some hay on the floor for beds, and a litter box in the back for a bathroom. Before takeoff, wooden planks are nailed into the door frame to secure them in place and ensure that the reporters don't enter any other parts of the plane. And with that, Bofors 1 was ready to fly, and we could finally talk about exactly what it is capable of. So this is the GTY-91. What exactly does this plane have to offer the most powerful country in the world? The GTY-91 is a record setter in many ways, but particularly in the cost department. The contract for GT Motors would have cost an estimated 7 to 10 billion United States dollars, making it several times more expensive than even the B-2 bomber. But with great costs also comes great power. The GTY-91 puts out an astounding 1,872 kilonewtons of thrust during its takeoff run. At maximum rated performance, these engines can put out a combined total of over 2,200 kilonewtons. That's enough thrust to lift the Statue of Liberty straight up. Its takeoff weight is about 500 tons. Its range is enough to fly from Los Angeles to Japan in a single flight without stopping, and complete the entire flight in less than 4 hours. If there was any one word to describe this behemoth supersonic jet, nearly doubling in size and tripling in weight to the Concorde, it would be excessive. Everything about it, from its cost to its size to its speed and to its luxury, is just too much. But don't just take my word for it. You too can fly it. If you own the game and join my Discord server, the vehicle will be available to fly soon after this video goes live. Thank you for tuning in, and fly safe. See you in the next one.